Hey all and welcome back to the Third HFC Disneython. We're going really old school today, so far back, in fact, as to witness the very birth of Walt Disney's feature animations, etc. We are checking out Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, released in 1937. Do I even need to, go over the details of what the plot's about? You really should know by now, but if not, you're in for a treat. So, if you want to check the video description to, find out how we sync up our stuff, please take a look. Otherwise, we're going to count you down and get on with the show in 3, 2, 1. Okie dokie, Rich. Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. How do you feel about this film, mate?
As a film, Snow White's okay.
Yeah.
It's very short, it's charming enough, but it's merely okay. It's not a film that I would necessarily say, go back and watch it, because it's so damn good.
Uh-huh.
What I will say, however, is that in terms of what it is and what it did for the world of animated film is just incredible. So, just to watch it for its place in cinematic history is a very, very, very important thing to see and witness.
No, for sure.
Because obviously, this is the first full-length feature animated film, which, obviously at the time, 1937, nobody really thought that it would go anywhere.
Not particularly, no.
I think the general reaction was, you're doing what now? You're doing a full-length animated feature. Are you high? Obviously not in those words, but that was, I think, the general belief that it's just what stupid person would do that?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it got so much acclaim. It's kind of incredible.
It's weird, because I'm looking up a BuzzFeed, top Disney things right now, and Snow White came in at 26. How do you feel about
that? I would have to have a proper look at my list. I probably wouldn't put it that high, which is quite cruel to Snow White, because it's not bad. It's just I have many others that are better for me.
Yeah, so obviously it's a little bit like what Cinderella would come to be. Obviously they're both based on Grimm's fairy tales, I'm pretty sure. But, you have the basic conceit of, evil stepmother / queen, stuck doing chores and whatnot, dressed in rags. But there is a magical twist to this one, although there is one in Cinderella as well, so I'm not really sure what I'm talking about.
Well, the key difference is that the evil stepmother in this one is a witch, whereas evil stepmother in Cinderella was not a witch. So the magic was used for good in Cinderella, the magic was used for bad in Snow White. That's probably your key differences. And also, Cinderella is arguably a slightly more interesting character than Snow White, because basically she just spends her entire film going, oh, I want a prince to marry me. Oh, I'm terrified of trees. Oh, I want to clean. I like cleaning. And that's my being asleep. So that's basically Snow White in a nutshell.
Well, the war had been going on for a bit by the time this was released, so people just wanted something nice and cutesy to take their mind off things, I guess.
It's true. So I suppose whilst we are right here at the start with obviously the magic mirror, one of the most iconic bits, it's probably worth talking about the original theatrical run of Snow White. So it premiered at Carthay Circle Theatre on December the 21st, 1937, to a wildly receptive audience, many of whom were the same naysayers who had dubbed the film Disney's folly before it kind of came to be.
Ooh.
And apparently it received a standing ovation at its completion from an audience that included the likes of Judy Garland and Marlene Dietrich. 6 days later, Walt Disney and the Seven Dwarfs appeared on the cover of Time magazine.
Wow.
The New York Times said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Disney." The American entertainment trade publication Variety observed that so perfect is the illusion, so tender the romance and fantasy, so emotional are certain portions when the acting of the characters strikes a depth comparable to the sincerity of human players that the film approaches real greatness.
Well, there'd been nothing like it at the time, so it's no wonder when people went head over heels for it.
Well, yeah, because, if you think about it, this is just a marvel of animation. It's incredible. So it had a few exclusive runs at Radio City Music Hall in New York and a theatre in Miami, and then it went into general release on February the 4th, 1938, and became a major box office success, earning 4 times more money than any other motion picture released in 1938. It then obviously proved equally popular with foreign audiences because they were all flabbergasted by it, and basically it just had a ridiculously long run. So I think Variety reported that the animated feature was having a remarkably long box office run at theatres in Sydney, Australia, where it was noted Walt Disney's Snow White experienced no difficulty at hitting 11 weeks with more ahead.
Wow.
And was having just ludicrously long runs. I think in London, where it had generated greater box office receipts than during its exclusive New York screenings, it ended up being in its 27th week at the New Gallery London and was going to be continued to be shown, which is just nuts. So it ended up making $3.5 million in the US and Canada, and by May 1939 grossed $6.5 million internationally, making it the most successful sound film of all time at that time. Which, you just look at it and you just go, good God!
So, shall we talk a little bit about the characters here? Obviously, we have the titular Snow White, who, she'll look better, more fashionable as the movie goes on, but right now I think
Yes.
The evil queen is a little bit jealous of her looks, but isn't fully aware that she is jealous right now. And then we have the prince, the hero of the film, quote-unquote, although it should really be the Seven Dwarfs in my eyes. He has no personality, does the prince?
Yes, well, I mean, part of the reason for that is that, like, obviously first major feature animated film for a set of animators who really were not used to trying to draw and animate photorealistic humans. I'm saying photorealistic, but you've got to think about the time and where we were with animation. This was about as photorealistic as you were going to get. And basically, the prince was the most difficult to draw and animate. They just couldn't feel like they got it right, because I think he sort of ended up looking like too pretty, or not. There was just something not quite right, and so because he was so difficult to animate, they decided to not include him in the story as much. So he basically turns up here and then right at the end, because that's all they could really afford to animate of him, because he was so difficult.
Well, we'll talk about the end when we get to it, but there is a little bit of a theory going on there. Oh, the hunter! Yeah, don't worry, we'll get to the theory. But the hunter, I completely forgot about him, to be honest.
Yeah, he's probably the one bit of the Snow White story that most people sort of forget, the huntsman. Unless, obviously, you follow the line of thought of those live-action tellings of the Snow White one that sort of foregrounded the huntsman and made him a hero character in it, all being a bit weird. But yeah, he's here. Obviously, the Queen's just like, yes, bring me Snow White's heart, because, like, my God, how dark do you have to be? Like, rip her heart out and bring it to me in a box.
Wow, we're going on really fast here. I thought the huntsman came in like 20 minutes in.
No, like, he's also hardly in the film. Like, he appears right now. Snow White's obviously having a lovely time in a field picking flowers. And then, yeah, she spends most of the time with the delightful dwarfs. And really, I mean, the film's only like 73 minutes long. I mean, obviously for a feature-length animated film at 1937, that's an incredible length.
That's nuts, yeah.
I mean, I will say that really, it is probably one of the most impressive animated films ever. Obviously for its time,
yeah.
But also actually, you look at certain elements of the animation, and it's actually arguably better than even some of the later Disney animations, because I think they spent such a long time trying to get just enough attention to detail, particularly with like the way the clothes move, and I think the way that they did the lines. There's just a particular softness to them that ends up being replaced with quite a lot of harsh lines come later Disney. I mean, there's the particular era, which I think is like the sort of Dark Ages, as they call it, where you've got lots of thick, scratchy black lines that go around all the characters, whereas this is all really soft and linked into the colour of the outfits that they've got on.
Alright, here we go. Running sequence 2.
Oh yes, and this is traumatic, actually.
Really, yeah.
I remember when I rewatched this, I was just like, Jesus wept, this is a thing.
At least she's dressed for travel, or in her finest and whatnot. I have to say, the use of colour in the film is amazing. It's a very colour-filled film, even though it has a lot of dark imagery to it. Don't even get me started on all the fancy jewels and whatnot we'll be seeing later.
I know this is meant to be terrifying, it probably sort of was a little bit at the time, but I look at this now and I just sort of want to laugh.
It's a little bit over the top.
I think it's because, obviously, we now live in a society which looks back at Snow White and is just like, God, girl, have a bit more kind of strength.
Get your shit
You're
together,
just sort of screaming. Yeah, she just spends most of her time screaming and running away from things and being like a full-on stereotypical girl. And obviously, nowadays, we're just like, no, you're better than that, Snow White. So, just watching this, it's just like, yes, this is definitely a product of its time.
Well, I mean, has she been trapped in the castle all this time? Is this her first time in the real wild world?
Well, it's definitely her first time in this forest, as evidenced by the fact that she's absolutely shitting herself.
Well, there you go then. So, you know.
But yes, obviously, whilst she's having her slight classic Disney stop, it's not quite there, because, you know, she's not laying on top of a bench or structure that is just about that right height. But it's close enough. So yes, Snow White is voiced by Adriana Caselotti, who basically, this is her only real role that she ever performed in, for very complex legal reasons.
Okay, lay it on us.
Yes, but she is the first female voice actor to be named a Disney legend. That was in 1994, about 3 years before her death.
It took them long enough.
I know. So basically, she had a brief stint as a chorus girl and session singer at MGM in 1935, and there was, I think, a bit of a fun story of how she actually ended up getting the role. But obviously she got the role, and she was paid a total of $970 for working on the film, equivalent to $16,512 in 2017. She was not credited, and had trouble finding new opportunities later in life. So Jack Benny, someone, specifically mentioned that he'd asked Disney for permission to use her on his radio show, and was ultimately told, I'm sorry, but that voice can't be used anywhere. I don't want to spoil the illusion of Snow White. Basically, I think the legal stuff was that in Caselotti's contract, she couldn't use her voice, or that voice, for any other roles because they wanted to keep Snow White kind of sacred, almost, in terms of Disney.
Yeah.
And so, because that was actually her voice, that basically meant that she could never really properly perform again in any other roles. So she did have an uncredited role in MGM's The Wizard of Oz, as she provided the voice of Juliet during the Tin Man song If I Only Had a Heart, speaking the line Wherefore Art Thou Romeo, and in 1946 she had an uncredited role in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, singing in Martini's bar as James Stewart was praying. And yeah, she really did get screwed over by it, because pretty much all the other stuff that she did was related to Snow White herself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really sad, because obviously she has such a unique voice. While it potentially can be a bit grating to our ears today, it's so unique in the fact that Disney effectively screwed her over by putting her in one of the most important animated films of all time. Is just really heartbreaking, really.
So let's talk about how it was included in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, mate. You knew it was coming.
Obviously.
Yeah, well, they waited until Birth by Sleep, a prequel game, an origin game, Kingdom Hearts 0, if you will, to include Snow White. And I think it felt right to wait until that point instead of having it in the first game, because, you know, the very start of Birth by Sleep is all princess stuff, and when you think of Snow White, you think of princesses, so, yeah.
Yeah, it also helps that in the opening of Birth by Sleep, it's the three classic Disney princesses of Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. Because whenever you think of like full-on classic Disney, it's those three princesses that are what most people are drawn to. And I think it was right to wait until then because, obviously, as I've said, Snow White as a film is not necessarily the most exciting.
No.
And also, I think there are a lot of other films that people would be more interested in playing worlds from. I think, obviously, the original Kingdom Hearts had a pretty decent mixture of worlds. Obviously, you had Tarzan, Hercules, Alice in Wonderland, Aladdin,
Nightmare Before Christmas,
Little Mermaid, Pinocchio, and have I missed any?
Did you say Little Mermaid?
Yes, I said Little Mermaid.
Okay.
I think that's the sort of the first 7.
Hercules?
So you've got a nice mixture of... Yes, said Hercules.
Okay.
So you've got a nice mixture of classic, Renaissance, and more contemporary Disney in that. And they were all worlds that were very interesting. Some obviously much more popular than others, but there was a nice mixture there. Obviously, Kingdom Hearts 2, they expanded upon it with even more big ones, but not so many majorly classic films, from what I remember.
The furthest it went back was Tron, I think. Oh, no. Steamboat Willie.
Oh yes, technically Steamboat Willie, but that's a sort of separate kettle of fish. So really, sort of, those were pretty much all the worlds that we had until Birth by Sleep. So I think having gone through all of those mostly big hitters, it made sense to go and have a look into more of Disney's history and having the game split into 2 halves of full-on classic Disney and then more contemporary Disney, because obviously you had Hercules, Disney Town there, and Deep Space with Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
So it sort of made sense having that comparison between classic and more new stuff. Obviously there was Peter Pan and Neverland in there, but that's besides the point. So I think it worked having that balancing act. And I think it also worked because you got to see characters that obviously you had seen in the original Kingdom Hearts actually have more of their story told.
Yeah, it was lovely.
What did you think of it?
I felt it was good. Obviously, there was the omission of, the hunter, the huntsman. Terror took his place in the story.
Yes, that was a thing.
And they had to kind of shoehorn in a boss fight with, the man in the mirror, or whatever the term is. But overall...
the magic mirror.
The magic mirror, thank you. Which has the zodiac signs around it, which is bordering on witchcraft, but, that's what it is, but I didn't expect it to be so overt. But yeah, I enjoyed its inclusion. It was a nice world, it had some nice music, it looked nice. Who played Snow White in Birth by Sleep exactly?
If you bear with me a second, I should be able to tell you.
Okay.
So, I believe that she was potentially portrayed by Carolyn Gardner, but I'm just going to clarify on that.
It's alright, we're just doing a bit of cleaning here, Rich, because this place is filthy. You'd think 7 middle-aged men lived here or something.
Well, yes, you definitely would. But yes, this is a classic Disney song, Whistle While You Work. And yes, I am correct, it is indeed Carolyn Gardner who voiced Snow White in Birth by Sleep. She was the voice of Snow from 2000 to 2010.
Nice.
She's currently, I believe, voiced by Pamela Ribben in Disney stuff. Because obviously it's one of the things that Disney do a lot, is they replace the voice actors whenever they become unable to continue doing the voice. Sometimes, just because they want to, other times not. Although apparently there's also Catherine Von Till, who is apparently still Snow White, so they might have 2 versions of her voice at the minute. I don't bloody know.
Apparently there's 2 voices from Mickey nowadays, but I'm not sure how true that is.
So basically what that is obviously you've got Brett Ewan, who is the main voice of Mickey. But you've also got Chris Diamantopoulos, who voiced him in the most recent Mickey Mouse cartoon, I believe. Because they wanted Mickey to sound much more like the Walt Disney voiced Mickey in classic Disney stuff. So that's why I think they hired him, because while Brett Ewan is a pretty damn decent Mickey...
He's grown on me, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't quite have the same sound as, say, Walt Disney himself when he voiced the character. Which is totally fair. I mean, sometimes if you want that closer to that sound, you're going to have to go find someone who can do it. But obviously the main VA is still Brett Ewan at the minute. But yes, I watched this and then it's just... What I think of is Happy Little Working Song from Enchanted.
Yeah,
because obviously that entire song is an homage to like this and Cinderella and all those sort of classic cleaning scenes in Disney films, and it's just delightful.
I was actually looking to see if that was on the Disneython free set list, but it's not, sadly.
What, Enchanted?
Uh-huh.
Because you've already bloody done it.
No, we haven't. I would remember recording Enchanted.
You did it in, like, Disneython 1?
Nope.
Or 2?
Nope.
Oh, come on, I'm gonna check it out and prove you wrong.
You do that, mate, and I assure you we have not recorded Enchanted.
Because otherwise I would have said, do Enchanted, for the love of God.
Well, that's what you get for assuming, mate. Ask that you and me, etc. He's looking, but he's not going to find it.
I'm looking, because it's bloody difficult to make my way through some of these things sometimes. YouTube menus have gotten really awful.
Yeah, they sort of have. Well, look at the shinies!
Oh yeah, this is just stunning.
Not quite the song I was waiting to hear, but the one following this, a treasure. One of Disney's best, I think. At least one of the catchy and most hummable.
You do seem to be right that it hasn't been... It must have been in the Proto Disneython.
Nope, wasn't there either.
Now, I know I'm not going crazy. Because I remember being just like, oh, I really wanted to do Enchanted, and being told we can't do it because we've already done it, so...
No, Richie, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, clearly I am going insane. Well, mayhaps we can replace one of the films we don't really want to do with Enchanted, because, oh my god, I love Enchanted!
We'll see, Richie. If you're a good boy, don't talk over me like you've been doing, and you don't smack your lips too much, which makes me edit more. Dopey. What a lad. Alright, so who are our titular Seven Dwarfs, mate? List them and read them off, if you will. I nearly had a stroke there, I apologise.
So, we have Doc, who's the one who wears the glasses, and often mixes up his words, voiced by Roy Atwell. We have Grumpy and Sleepy, both voiced by Pinto Colvig, who, obviously, you can tell their character types by that. Happy, voiced by Otis Harlan. Bashful, voiced by Scotty Matrawl. Sneezy, as voiced by Billy Gibbet Gilbert. And Dopey, as voiced by Eddie Collins, who did vocal effects and also the live action reference only, because obviously Dopey is technically mute. So, there is that delightful thing.
I don't think you could get away with naming people after what their main trait is nowadays, you know?
I know, but the hilarious thing is that the Seven Dwarfs have had many sort of different names over the years. So there was a 1912 play of Snow White where they were called Blick, Flick, Glick, Plick, Quee, Snick and Wick. They have been called, in some versions of the Grimm's fairy tale, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
I like that.
You have something called Mr. Magoo's Little Snow White, where you've got Axelrod, Bartholomew, Cornelius, Dexter, Eustace, Ferdinand and George.
Okay.
Happily Ever After, where they're called Blossom, Critterina, Marina, Moonbeam, Muddy, Sunburn, and Thunderella, so I think they must all be female dwarves. Once Upon a Time, the TV series changed up some of the names, so Grumpy was also Dreamy, or there's something there, and then also they've got a Stealthy in there for some bizarre reason.
What, is that just like a midget Solid Snake? What's going on?
Honestly, I do not know. But there's that. In Snow White and the Huntsman, you have Baith, Col, Dwyer, Gort, Mwernion, Quirt, and Gus. Which, yeah, that's all sounds great. And, yeah, so they've had many different names over the years, but the ones that most people would recognise are Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, Dopey, and Doc. And to be honest, I'm quite down with that because they're great.
Look at this bitch taking up like 3 beds that the Seven Dwarfs need.
I know!
They're working men. They've been out in the mines all day collecting jewels, which I assume they sell on, because what used to like the dwarves have for little chunks of metal and whatnot.
Well, I mean, you'd hope they do, but you never know that with dwarves. They're a strange alternate species, apparently, according to this film.
Well, at least in like Disney universe and a lot of fantasy. Do you think the Seven Dwarfs is where Tolkien got the idea for the party, the pre-fellowship, if you will?
I'm not sure, if only because a lot of what Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings was based a lot on medieval literature and Old English literature, and dwarves did have, I think, from what I recall correctly, quite an influence in there. So while the original story of Snow White might have had some influence, or the Grimm's fairy tales, because he was such a medievalist, I would think it's probably something more from those that would have inspired the dwarves in those stories. Because, yeah, I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The one story of J.R.R. Tolkien that I'll always remember from being told when I was at uni was that, because he used to lecture at Oxford, and what he would do was that he would walk into a lecture on Beowulf and just begin with, "What?" Because that's the first word in Beowulf, and then he just start reciting the opening of Beowulf.
That's great.
Which, I mean, I have to say, that would have been amazing. I believe he was also well known for having supervisions and tutorials with his students in the pub, because why the hell not? So yeah, Tolkien was pretty awesome, but I don't think he had much to do with Snow White.
Fair dues, mate, fair dues. Alright, got a bit of a home invasion, lads. Good job we came armed this time. No one, not even the government, nay, the evil queen, will take away our right to bear pickaxes.
Also, I love how Dopey has it the wrong way round.
Would be dopey if he didn't. Shh, gotta be very quiet now, or the characters in the film will hear.
I know! That's why we're whispering!
Nicely done.
Very nicely done.
Why did they give him a stutter, Doc? Is it just because he didn't have any other defining characteristics?
I believe so, yes. That seems to be pretty much the key thing. It's just like he doesn't really have any other personality trope other than being the leader, so it's just like, no, let's give him malapropisms and make him misspeak. It's quite funny, but still, it's just like, mate, just get it together.
Not a very nice thing to say to a stutterer, mate. That's not going to help him get over it.
It's definitely not, but hey, he's a fictional character. These sorts of things don't matter.
Wow.
Anyway. Obviously, for anybody who does have a stutter or does constant malapropisms, it can get better. It just takes work.
Don't try and dig yourself out of the hole you're already in, mate.
It's never going to work. Anyway, whilst we're here with the dwarves, it's probably worth bringing up again the story that I think I have told before, but I'll tell it again because it's particularly pertinent whilst we're talking about Snow White, of the cancelled prequel that was going to be created for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Because obviously one of the things that Disney pretty much held as a big thing is you do not touch Snow White. Like, you're not doing a sequel, you're not doing anything to it. It remains pure and sacred in the history of Disney. Fair enough, it is a very important one in that whole shtick. But in the 2000s, in 2000s, Disney Toon Studios began development on a computer animated prequel to the film, which is going to be titled The Seven Dwarfs. Yeah, it's one of those where you just go, but the ideas behind it sounded really quite interesting. So director Mike Deesa and screenwriter Evan Spiliotopoulos pitched a story explaining how the dwarves met, how the evil queen killed Snow White's father and took the throne, and ultimately they were going to aim for that sort of Lord of the Rings market and making it sort of high fantasy, maybe slightly gritty. But the idea of the plot, well, that summary doesn't necessarily sound great. When you do actually read the whole summary of what the plot was going to be and the ideas behind it, it did sound actually really quite cool.
I suppose.
And it's one of those things where you just go, I would have liked to have perhaps seen that, but ultimately, Disney Toon management kept sticking their roar in and making terrible decisions. And effectively, they wanted to make Dopey the main character. They wanted to have a thing at the start of the film that shows how Dopey lost his voice upon witnessing the death of his mother.
Ooh.
And it's just like, I'm sorry, what? That's not appropriate. That's not okay.
Yeah, why add an unnecessary, tragic twist on a really funny character?
Exactly. I mean, Disney Toon management's whole thing was just like, we want to have sort of dark, gritty realism. It'll be so funny to see, Dopey and why he's like this. And it's just like, no, that won't work. And I think that caused Mike Deesa to ultimately leave the project because he was just like, no, you are not butchering my idea like this. And ultimately, once Disney purchased Pixar in 2006, John Lasseter, the fallen John Lasseter, who became Disney Toon's new chief creative officer, cancelled Dwarves very soon after, and the project basically died.
Yeah, probably for the best, really.
I agree. And I think the only real stuff that has occurred since then is that an animated TV series featuring the Seven Dwarfs titled The 7D came out on Disney XD and ran for about 2 years, which apparently the show takes place 30 years before the events of the original film. I mean, I remember seeing all the stuff around and I was just like, oh god, it looks awful. From what I can tell, it wasn't necessarily a horrendous show, and I think people did sort of enjoy it. Or maybe not. I mean, Brian Lowry of Variety wrote poorly of the show, claiming it had none of the charm of the source material.
What the fuck am I looking at here? This isn't even akin to the same art style.
Oh yeah, it looks completely ridiculous, and it makes no sense. But it was a thing that they created, and I think perhaps for kids it was sort of okay. But, yeah, critics didn't like it. But hey, it ran for 2 series, so it can't have been all that much of a failure. But yeah, it's definitely nowhere near as good as the original film. Although I've now seen on the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs Wikipedia page that apparently Disney have announced a new film in development titled Rose Red, which is a live-action spin-off film which is told from the perspective of Snow White's sister Red Rose. That sounds awful. And then in late October of 2016, it was announced that they were going to do a feature-length live-action adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which also... not sure. That said, on this page, it does say that Pasek and Paul were in negotiations to write songs for the film, and I'm okay with that because Pasek and Paul are amazing.
What else have they done, mate?
Greatest Showman, Dear Evan Hansen. What else have they done? But basically, they are gods at the minute. They also had done La La Land. They also did the music for James and the Giant Peach, apparently.
Nice.
But I'm mostly there for Greatest Showman and Dear Evan Hansen because particularly Dear Evan Hansen because that is just a phenomenal musical, and I really, 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 really need it to come to the UK because I really would want to go to London and just sob for 2 hours whilst I watch it and have such an amazing time. But yeah, I mean, for me, Pasek and Paul can do no wrong. I know they are kind of notched down to work on a few other film projects. So apparently, it seems like they might still be writing films for the live-action Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They've also been brought in to collaborate with Alan Menken to write new songs for the live-action Aladdin.
Ooh, nice.
Which, live-action Aladdin is slightly terrifying me at the minute, and I'm not sure I'm best pleased, but Pasek and Paul being involved does give me some hope for the music, because, I mean, they can do no wrong.
Grumpy would be an incel.
He would be.
Really though, Grumpy is probably my spirit animal. Like, a cross between him and, like, Dark and maybe Happy.
I think I'm probably a mixture of Doc and Happy, I think.
Very much so, mate. There was a long build-up to this scene, by the way. We covered a lot of ground between the dwarves coming home and actually finding Snow White.
I know, it's just like the opening of the film just sort of rattles along at a ridiculous pace. Like, within about 15 minutes, we were already at the dwarf's house, and then we've spent about another kind of 20 minutes building up for the dwarves actually meeting Snow White.
This is part of the charm of, like, the classic princess movies, though. They do kind of go along at their own, like, I guess you could call it boring pace, although I'm not really looking for, like, super-duper action if I sit down to watch, like, Snow White and one. I guess you could call it, like, comfy, atmospheric, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it, because it's not hugely exciting, it just sort of trundles along, and is charming and sweet, and very much a classic Disney film, but not much more than that.
Sleepy, also my spirit animal. The backup spirit animal, if you will.
I suppose at this point we kind of need to figure out who the other HFC members are in terms of the Seven Dwarfs.
Flame is pervy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that perfectly fits.
Mexi is speedy because he does speedruns. No, not like Gonzalez, you fucking racist. Don't just laugh and not say anything. Don't put me on the spot.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to leave you to that one.
Okay, I'll join you in that hole you dug earlier.
It's really nice and warm in here, isn't it? It's just nice and cosy. And if you noticed all those gems in here, it's probably a good idea, actually.
Oh yes, indeed. Let's die in here. I'll eat rubies until I die. Rumpy says in the background.
No, it does say Grumpy. It's just that his bed clothes are just hanging slightly over and covering the G. So it does look like it says Rumpy. So maybe he wants to get up to a little bit of Rumpy Pumpy.
No, he's the one with the best horse. Clearly. So this is where Snow White, the effeminate treasure, I should say, the essence, if you will, comes into the masculine household and changes things for the better. And it's probably one of the only examples in which it's actually done in a sort of well-done manner, I'd say.
Yeah, because I would say it is the only Disney film where a female character ends up in a male-dominated area and doesn't end up having a romantic relationship with one of said men.
Yeah, they all respect her, and they're like best friends, I would say, at a push. But no, it's all about Snow White and the Prince at the end of the day. Spoilers, by the way.
As if it's a spoiler, it's a bloody story from 1850 frickin' 4. Well, earlier than 1854, because the first edition of Snow White appeared in 1812. So, it's a very old fairy tale. I mean, it's an interesting one, actually, because the original Snow White, in its German, is Schneewittchen, which is basically just Snow White. It features sort of the key elements of the magic mirror, the poisoned apple, the glass coffin, the characters of the evil queen and the seven dwarves. But in the original story, the dwarves didn't actually have any names, apparently. But also, the story which everyone called Snow White shouldn't be confused with the story of Snow White and Rose Red, which was another fairy tale which was collected by them. And that's quite fun, I suppose.
You must wash behind your ears. You've been in the dirt all day. Dirty boys don't get good food.
Exactly, you need to clean up after yourself, like my god.
Grumpy's like 5 seconds and this fucking bitch is making us clean. I hate this already. And off he goes to post on the 4chans.
Indeed.
Which is funny because I'm on there all day nowadays, so it's a bit hypocritical of me to say.
Oh dear, Tom, it's shameful. I say, as you know, having spent many hours in the past week before recording this commentary just playing Spider-Man for like over 4-hour sessions, which, I mean, it's amazing. I love it. It's great. But yeah, it's just like, oh, got a little bit of addicted there.
It's fine. We all have that one game that comes along, and usually, for me, it's something akin to like Kingdom Hearts, etc. But yeah, Spider-Man completed filling out the map today. Look out for a playthrough in early 2019.
Yay!
All your hands are dirty, filthy, out, damn spot, out, or you won't get supper.
Tom, I'm so happy you made a Shakespeare reference there. Like,
it's the most basic bitch of Shakespeare references made. Don't applaud me.
Well, no, out damn spot is not one of the most common, I would say. Most common ones would be to be or not to be, that is the question. Or alas, poor Yorick. Or, I'm trying to think of any others that are particularly...
Do you have a point with this spiel?
No, I'm just saying that out damn spot is not that common. I mean, it's relatively common, but still, I'm very proud of you for bringing that one up.
Yeah, whatever, let's just go wash our hands. They look like being left off to the fucking gulag or something.
It does certainly seem like that. So yes, something that I suppose, because we're not going to see the Queen for a while, but it's probably worth actually bringing up the quote that I believe everything sort of gets a bit wrong.
Uh-huh.
So, in the original fairy tale, it's, the incantation is magic mirror in my hand, who is the fairest in the land? Which is just like, ooh! But I believe that most people slightly mess up the line whenever they say it, because everyone thinks that the line is mirror, mirror on the wall, but actually it's sort of more magic mirror on the wall. And basically, I think people... Well, there's some sort of confusion over everything. But I do believe that it is magic mirror.
Are you gonna get to the point of this spiel, Richie? Come on.
I was, but then I'm just reading through debunking Mandela effects and just going, I have no idea what you're actually telling me on this information. Yeah, I was just going, what are you saying? But I'm pretty sure that, yeah, everyone thinks that she says mirror, mirror on the wall, but she actually says magic mirror on the wall, I believe. It's one of those things which is indeed an instance of, I believe it is the Mandela effect.
Yeah, it's like when you think we covered Enchanted where we didn't really.
Basically, it's where you have experienced events that are from a different reality. Or something to that effect, where your mind makes you think that you've seen something or that something is the case. So, like, a lot of people believe that in Star Wars, it is Luke, I am your father, when in actual fact it's no, I am your father. Where just it's become common knowledge that it's Luke, I am your father, when it's definitely not.
Yeah, and who can forget Yoda's classic line, capitalism does not work, overthrow everyone.
Perfect.
Okay, I think... Oh, I hate saying this. Dopey's insides are well and truly hydrated now, so maybe we can have dinner.
Yes, I think that would probably be okay, although I don't think they would be entirely all that hugely clean because, they're all washing in that same water and kind of feel like, no, you've got all your grub in there. You're just getting all your grub on each other.
No.
And just, ew, no.
Do you think part of Scrooge McDuck was based on Grumpy?
Perhaps. Because obviously they did have this as a hallmark before Scrooge McDuck became a thing.
I'm talking about like the comic Scrooge McDuck, because honestly, like the original DuckTales series was really a toned down version of him.
Yeah, I mean it probably was, but I think it would just be difficult to tell, really. But I suppose also, whilst stuff is occurring, it's probably also worth bringing up even more some of just the accolades and incredible influence that Snow White had on film. So I believe there was a bit of an outcry at the 10th Academy Awards that the film wasn't nominated for like best film or anything because I think they thought because it's animated it couldn't be. And while they didn't create the best animated feature, I think for quite a number of years, Walt Disney was awarded an honorary Oscar at the 11th Academy Awards and was then actually given 7 mini Oscar awards for each of the Seven Dwarfs, which is just adorable. Although I believe that the film was nominated for Best Musical Score the year before. In 1989, the United States Library of Congress deemed the film culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry. The American Film Institute has ranked it among the 100 greatest American films and has also named it as the greatest American animated film of all time in 2008. Debatable in terms of as a film, but in terms of cultural significance,
yeah,
it's a no-brainer. So yeah, even now, it's still looked upon very fondly by most people who have any interest in animation.
I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite Disney movies, but I definitely agree it deserves its place in history.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's one of those things of some of us watch it and it's just like, it's all right.
Okay, now, almost like 40 minutes later after first seeing her, we finally go back to the Evil Queen.
Exactly, like she hardly had any kind of motive and plot importance, but now finally she does get some usage, which is great. So yes, the Evil Queen, or as she is sort of actually called, Queen Grimhilde, which I kind of am just like, wait, what? Because it's one of the things where she's not really given a proper name, but apparently her actual name is Queen Grimhilde, although pretty much most of us know her as the Evil Queen or the Queen in Disney's Snow White, just the same as we know the prince as the Prince. I believe that there was a whole thing at some point of people thinking that the prince's actual name was Florian or something of that ilk.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I think that was then ultimately just debunked and saying, well, no, he's just called the Prince. That is his entire character. That is as important as he is.
He cast off his real name so he could become as handsome as he was.
Exactly. But yes, the Evil Queen is voiced by Lucille Laverne, who was an American actress known for her appearances in silent, scolding, obnoxious, vituperative, sarcastic, cunning, and vengeful roles in early colour films, as well as being sort of very good on the stage. But Snow White was actually her final film role, and it's the one that obviously most people these days recognise her for.
Fair play, she does a great job, I have to say, and she may not be my favourite Disney villain, but she's fun to watch go in either of her forms, really.
Oh, definitely. It's really awesome. And I mean, the Evil Queen is ultimately the original Disney villainess. And if you look at it, quite a lot of Disney villains that kind of follow her do take a number of cues from her in many forms. Obviously, the coloration, so the whole purple thing, the red, the black, the lime green that's involved. Also, I'm just looking at her shoes and just thinking, oh my god, she's wearing heels. Not something I've really ever paid attention to. But also, this is just an iconic sequence of looking into the glass and being about to transform into an evil old hag.
See, usually you want an old woman, getting a youth potion, but this kind of did it in reverse, which I find interesting.
Oh, definitely, and I mean, just, Jesus Christ, this is horrifying.
Yeah, most villains would probably just dress up, but not Grimhilde. She goes the full 9 miles.
Exactly, even so much that her skeleton can be seen through her skin when lightning strikes.
Oh god, the stereotypical sort of boil on the nose, hunched over witch, but a really iconic sort of figure, you know?
Oh, definitely, and it's probably the version of the Evil Queen that most people remember, and it's the one that I think most people associate with Snow White, because when you think of it, you think of her giving the apple to Snow White. That's the kind of key image.
So I guess this is all just backup, just in case the huntsman didn't work, etc, etc. Just buy a gun next time. I don't think pickaxes can stop a gun.
Well, it's because the huntsman failed that she's just no, I'm going to go do this myself. If he can't do the job for me, I will do it.
Do you like a bit of music after a dinner, mate?
Oh, I do, and I mean, this is a particularly iconic little jig and dance, because the animation used in this was then reused in Robin Hood.
Oh lordy, yes it was. Okay, you can start off with this if you want.
Well, I mean, it's mostly prevalent to Robin Hood, but obviously the effort that they took in doing the animation for things like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and all that, because a lot of it was sort of rotoscoped in a way.
Uh-huh.
So they had the people perform it in real life, and then they sort of drew as they did those scenes to get it just right. Mm-hmm. Which I mean is just incredible that is how it was all created. But because they had those cells of animation, they were then able to reuse them in later films where they wanted that sort of sequence to happen, but they didn't have the money to just recreate all that animation from scratch. And so Robin Hood, which was definitely made on a budget, made sure to make use of some of those classic pieces of Disney animation. There's quite a bit from Snow White. I'm pretty sure there's also a bit from Sleeping Beauty, although I think that which is the final dance of Sleeping Beauty, is also used in Beauty and the Beast, if I recall correctly, in the final kind of dance scene.
Or maybe the Aristocats. It all kind of blends together, really.
Yeah, mostly for that period of Disney which is classified sort of as the Dark Ages. They do reuse a lot of animation. And actually, it's probably worth, since I have mentioned it a few times, mentioning the different eras of Disney.
Sure, mate, yeah.
So the key eras that we have are the Golden Age, which is 1937 to 1942.
Yeah, you're watching a Golden Age commentary, baby.
Yes, indeed we are. You've then got the wartime era, which is 1943 to 1949. You have the Silver Age, which is 1950 to 1959.
Do you want to give an example of a movie, like, for each age, please, mate? Go back to the wartime one.
Yep, so just bear with me a second whilst I get the stuff. So, obviously, Golden Age, you've got Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, which are obviously classics. Wartime era is sort of the one which is, I think, the most unknown period of Disney.
Possibly.
Because it's like Saludos, Amigos, The Three Caballeros, Make My Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Because most of those are sort of multiple short films within each and were pretty much largely ignored and widely unpopular. But that's because obviously there were lower budget, smaller team of animators because people were off at war, and yeah, people weren't the biggest fan of that era. 1950 to 1967 is the Silver Age, and also saw the death of Walt Disney, which features Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, The Sword and the Stone, and The Jungle Book, which was the last film that Walt himself worked on before his death.
Interesting.
Then you have 1917 to 1988, which some people call the Bronze Age and other people call the Dark Age. And that's sort of where, following the death of Disney, the company struggled to sort of find its footing, and they didn't really have any major animators or directors that I think sort of had the same level of vision. And they struggled to sort of find an audience and struggled to get the animations right. And that's sort of the era of the Aristocats, Robin Hood, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The Rescuers, The Fox and the Hound, Black Cauldron, Great Mouse Detective, and Oliver and Company. And while The Great Mouse Detective was both critically and commercially successful, most of the films is. I mean, actually, I would pick out quite a few of those and say they're actually not half bad. Including Robin Hood, which, as you've seen in previous Disneythons, Robin Hood's a classic for us Rottingham people. But generally, in that era, the films just were box office flops. Nobody really flocked to them. And then you come to the Disney Renaissance, which is what most of us of our era recognise, because that is when, well, that came with The Little Mermaid and continued through The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan and Tarzan, which...
Good lineup.
That's a pretty much incredible lineup of films. Like, I'd say probably the weakest two in that list would be The Rescuers Down Under and Pocahontas. And even then, they're not terrible films.
No, not at all.
Then you have the post-Renaissance era, which was 2000 to 2009, which is sort of Disney's weird experimental phase that was also not necessarily commercially successful, and people see it as sort of the second Dark Age. So that had Fantasia 2000, Dinosaur, Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, Home on the Range, Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, and Bolt. So there are a few really damn good films in there. I mean, Lilo and Stitch was probably the biggest success of all of those films.
Yeah.
But I would say that there are still a few pretty damn good classics in there, like Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis, obviously Lilo and Stitch. I would put Treasure Planet and Brother Bear in there as well, although they do have their issues.
Yes, they do.
And then also Meet the Robinsons, which has its issues, but is a thoroughly delightful film.
Yep, we actually covered that in a previous Disneython.
Yes, we did. It was an absolute delight there. There are a few clunkers in the second Dark Age. Primarily, I think, Dinosaur, Home on the Range, Chicken Little, etc. So yeah, people weren't kind of best pleased, particularly towards the end of the Second Dark Age, because, I mean, like, obviously Home on the Range basically killed off 2D animation.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and then obviously Chicken Little is Chicken Little.
You know what's funny? Heldrain and I actually did record a commentary for Home on the Range, and it was fine, the commentary that is, but in the end we just decided not to release it because I don't want to dignify that film.
Well, I suppose, you know, when we eventually get to like Disneython 5 and we run out of all the other films, we'll probably have to do it, but that's for then. I mean, who knows, I might not even be doing commentary by that point, so I might get away with it. Anyway.
You will not, I assure you.
Anyway, we are now currently in what is seen as the second Disney Renaissance, which I think some people would argue the start date of it, but most people see it as being 2010 to present. So it starts with The Princess and the Frog, then you've got Tangled, Winnie the Pooh, Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Big Hero 6, and then obviously you have got Zootopia and Moana.
Mm-hmm, yep.
At the minute, I was just looking around at my collection to go, yes, that is, I think, the most recent Disney film. And obviously you've also got the addition of Marvel and Star Wars into that fold. And well, I know there are obviously arguments about the quality of Star Wars these days. That's kind of besides the point. In general, we are still in the second Disney Renaissance. And in terms of the core Disney films, I would say that they've not really had a major film flop since probably Tangled, really. I've not watched Winnie the Pooh, so I can't comment on that one. But I'd say pretty much since Tangled, all of the films have been utterly delightful, and pretty much all of them have been kind of gangbusters in terms of numbers. I mean, Tangled did phenomenally well. Frozen just... it's Frozen. Moana, just incredible as well. I think Zootopia / Zootropolis did really well as well. I think Big Hero 6 is probably the least well... it's the one that did the least well of the most recent ones.
Well, I mean, I've only ever felt like watching that movie once, and that was for the second Disneython, so...
I do still quite like Big Hero 6.
Hey, I like it just fine, and the Kingdom Hearts adaptation looks amazing, but it's like a popcorn film. I only really want to watch it once, and I have consumed it, and I will move on and watch something else.
Yeah, which is totally fair. But yes, I have to say, I do hope that the second Disney Renaissance lasts for a very long time. But I'd say that technically we are probably due going into a new era of Disney, because they've only ever really lasted for maybe a decade at most. I think the longest was the Bronze Age or the Dark Age, which lasted for 18 years.
Jeez.
Every other era was... so Golden Age was about 5 years, Wartime was 6, Silver Age was about 9, Bronze Age 18, Disney Renaissance about 10 years, Post-Renaissance about 9 or 10, and the Revival era is going on for kind of 8 to 9 at this moment in time. So, or the second Disney Renaissance. So, like... we are due going into a new Disney era, which is a slightly terrifying prospect, but as long as, you know, we keep doing well, then you could theoretically, depending on the quality, call it like the second Golden Age. But we will see what happens, and we'll see what actually comes out of it. But they've been doing damn well as of late, and I'm very happy with that.
After you watched this for the first time, did it put you off apples for a little bit?
No, largely because I don't actually remember the first time I watched Snow White.
Same,
like,
honestly.
I know I watched it, I know I must have watched it as a kid, but I just physically do not remember watching it. So the first time that I think I kind of consciously got it in living memory was when I got the Blu-ray for Christmas the other year, because I was just like, I need to build up my Disney Blu-ray collection, because it's getting there, but it is still surprisingly small, considering the fact that I am a ridiculous Disney nerd who really loves everything.
Well, I mean, you were made for the Disneython, let's be honest here.
I really was. This is my thing. Like Disney musicals, fairy tales, myths and legends. Like just what more could I need?
Oh, bless you. But yeah, I was casting my mind back the other day. I tried to remember what my first Disney film was, and my memory only goes as far back as getting a VHS of Alice in Wonderland, but I know there was stuff before that, so it's kind of weird. I think I'm losing some of the memories of the start of my life, which is natural. Your brain can't handle every single memory you have in life. Also, this is my favourite GIF ever, going down into the trapdoor GIF.
It's an amazing one. It's just incredible. Yeah, I also can't remember my first Disney film. I think because I was... well, we were both sort of born in the era where they started re-releasing a lot of the classic Disney films on video, and I think even in cinema. And although I don't remember going to the cinema to see any Disney for a number of years, sort of, I seem to recall, well, the first memory of going to the cinema that I have was going to see Star Wars The Phantom Menace.
You poor thing.
I know, but I was a kid, so I was basically the target audience, because I was 5. Jesus Christ, I was 5! Bloody hell!
Time flies.
Yeah, I didn't think I was that young when I was it, but I must have been, because I did go and see it when it came out, and I mean, I loved it. I loved Jar Jar, because, as I said, I was the target market at that time.
Yeah.
That's sort of the first proper memory I have of going to the cinema, though I know that I must have been before then, but God only knows.
It's funny that retroactively became your first Disney experience.
Yes, it's very true. But yeah, so I can't remember exactly what my first Disney film ever was, but obviously I did see a lot of the Disney Renaissance films. I do remember that for some reason I don't think we ever properly watched Aladdin for a very long time, and I can't remember why, because I think my dad said that he always sort of liked it and wanted to watch it, but that me and Sophie were my sister Sophie, we were too scared of like the Cave of Wonders, so we didn't ever want to watch it.
Aww.
Which, looking back, I'm just like, I'm sorry, what? Because I don't remember that being the case, but then I don't really remember actually watching it as a kid, even though I know that I did. And it's one of those things, if you just look back and you just go, Jesus Christ, memories are really fickle things.
They are. They come and go as they please, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny because I've just been doing my solo commentary, cutscene commentary, because I couldn't be able to play the actual game of Chain of Memories, and obviously all that stuff to do with memories. I'm just like, yeah, this is all sounding about right.
Hold on. You couldn't be bothered to play it while Muggins over here is doing a fucking Kingdom Hearts marathon, like 6 hours at a time.
Yes, because I actually really don't like Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories. Gameplay-wise, it just bores the hell out of me, and I don't think that I could really put myself through that again. I should have recorded it when I was playing it the first time, so then it wouldn't have been as bad, but I couldn't face it, so it was just like, you know what? No, I'm just going to avoid that and just do the story, because, you know what? Sod Rechain of Memories and Chain of Memories, its gameplay is awful. I would much rather play through Days again, and I know that that's a controversial statement to make, but I would much rather play through Days Encoded than Rechain of Memories.
Oh, she befuddled Grumpy, what witch magic is this? No! I am manly, off I go. I did enjoy Doc deepening his voice earlier, I don't think I didn't catch that. Oh, Grumpy. What a lad. The Seven Dwarfs really do bring this film alive, I think.
Oh yeah, I think they managed to hit the right mark of comic relief. In that, obviously, some later Disney films do struggle with being overly comic relief. I mean, Cinderella was a prime example, but I think they did hit it just right with this.
Yeah.
Now, actually, this is an interesting thing, because obviously we've had some music throughout. So the songs in Snow White were composed by Frank Churchill and Larry Morey, with the incidental score composed by Paul J. Smith and Lee Harline. But since Disney didn't have its own music publishing company at the time, the publishing rights for the music and songs were administered through Bourne Company Music Publishers, which continues to hold the rights, apparently. In later years, Disney was able to acquire back the rights to the music from many other films, but actually not Snow White. It did ultimately become the first film to have a soundtrack album, which is also incredible. Snow White's the first, as well as being the first feature-length animated film, it's the first American film to have a soundtrack album, which was actually released in conjunction with it. Before it, it was just unheard of and seen as having little value to a movie studio, but then obviously since that, it really has become a thing that everyone knows about. And, they're making a pie for Grumpy. That's adorable.
Well, he has given up house room to this person. Oh my god, Grandma, you look evil today.
Yes, and also, you're blocking my light, Doc. Just move out of the way of the sun. I was having a nice time looking at my pie. Also, get your frickin' face out of my window. Stranger danger.
I'm just saying, this movie may have instilled fear of the homeless in me.
It's the type of thing that would. It's also just don't leave your windows wide open like that, because anybody could get through. Like this crazy old hag, who's trying to sell me poison apples.
I can lean in and give you all the tastes of Granny Smith's your heart desires. Oh, by the way, they're poison. The what, sorry? Oh, they're boysenberry flavoured. I love the vultures just there yep, they know what's happening. The Tweety birds know what's happening. Snow White, oh, she's too pure to see a danger zone when she enters one.
Yes, and I mean, this is a very good lesson for everybody. Don't eat things that strangers give you, because anything could be wrong with them. I mean, obviously, there's the whole story that's going on at the minute in the news when we're recording this of weird assholes putting needles into strawberries in Australia and them somehow managing to get to actually being sold to people. I still can't believe that is a story. But yes, don't take food from strangers. It's bad.
Well, a stranger's just a friend you haven't met yet.
Well, yes, but when a stranger is an old hag who's trying to poison you, it's generally, stranger danger is a very good thing to keep in mind.
Very much so, right, yeah. Are you going to eat this apple, or shall I? I've waited too long. I'm hungry. I'm dead. Roll credits.
Also, I love how all of the animals were just we are so good we can't jump through this window and stop this from happening.
No, we have to get the men to do it for us. And to think, they'd had a really nice sleep. They've got a woman caretaking the house now, all ready to get to work, refreshed and whatnot. And wouldn't you know it, the only good thing that's come into their lives in many years is on, death's door right now, pretty much.
Yeah, she's probably going to be completely dead by the time they get back, because, I mean, how far away is this mine? My word. Well,
at the start of the film, they left and it was daybreak, and they got back to the house and it was, well into evening.
So, yeah, it's frickin' forever away. So, basically Snow White is buggered right now.
This is the best apple ever. It's organically grown. You types like that, right? Oh, yes. I can't get my voice that high, I'm sorry.
Yes, my falsetto is not great either. It's why, whenever I sing, there comes a point where I'm just nope, it's too high! Stop it! Why do you have to put things in range that are just far out of my range? It makes me really sad.
If you trimmed the film down a bit, got rid of some of the faffing about with, searching the house and setting up for dinner and so on, you could probably get this film under an hour, because there's only about under 10 minutes left and we're in the grand finale, no?
Yeah, I mean, really, you could arguably get it down to under 30, because pretty much the majority of the middle chunk of the film is utterly pointless and serves no point other than to just show a bit of character development, which I mean does have a purpose. It's great. It really does make it more impactful what occurs. It makes the dwarves' relationship with Snow White feel better than it perhaps would do otherwise. But in terms of actual plot stuff that happens, yeah, you could get this all in under 30 minutes.
I mean, you could summarise any plot in, like, a few minutes, really, let's be honest here. And I hate people who say, oh, it must not have much story, or very good story, if you can do it in a few minutes. Bitch, that's what summaries mean. Learn English.
Yeah, it's like... So, because I'm currently trying to get my first book published, to do that, what you need to do is when you're sending off, you need to send a summary of it. So, like, you could have written... So I have written like a 80,000 words novel, but in order to kind of get it published, I have to send a summary of it. Well, like a full summary, all the story beats and everything. That's got to be a page long, so you're talking maybe about 500 words. So I've got to put an 80,000 word book into 500 words. I've managed it, but that's what they expect you to do. So if your story cannot be summarised in that shorter time frame, then they just take one look at it and just go, well, clearly it's too complicated for anyone. No, sod off. So there's a limit that you can go to with how complicated your plot can be. And generally, the simpler it is, the better, because it makes it easier to describe, it makes it easier to get across to people exactly what you're going for. I mean, Snow White, for example, is evil queen, hates pretty young girl, tries to kill her.
Yeah, I love those really, like, obnoxious summaries. Like, evil queen, hates girl, gives apple, dwarfs come in, kill her, the end.
Yeah, I mean, that is basically Snow White in a nutshell. Although, obviously, we did miss out the ending there, but that's fine because you're going to see it in about 5 minutes.
Oh, the vultures know, they smell death. Not quite the vultures from another Disney movie we're actually recording next. Don't worry, we're doing these out of order, just to make it extra confusing.
Well, of course. I mean, it's the only way to do these things. Otherwise, we'd end up potentially doing like some really long films all in a row or some really short films all in a row. And then we just get a bit tired. So at least this way, you know, bit of differentness going on all the time. And this is actually a really goddamn well animated scene.
It really is.
This is impressive. No matter that this was 1937, this is still impressive animation to this day.
Like, you have all the rain with all the different characters moving about and whatnot. Like, really dynamic if you think about it for 1937.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, also, you look at some of the things that are kind of going to move, and one of the common things that a lot of people see, it's mostly common in anime, but it is common in a lot of other animation. You kind of can see it there. But the stuff that is going to move is a completely different look to the stuff that isn't moving. But like, you look from there, they're very well matched and they look all fitting together.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very impressive. And yes, there she goes. I love how the evil queen / the hag does have one of the most over-the-top death sequences possible. 1, she falls off a cliff. 2, the massive boulder that she was trying to use smushes her. 3, all of the dwarves look over the edge and are just like, oh my god. And then the vultures go in for the kill, just to make sure that, you know, she wasn't dead enough. Now it's just like, yeah, she is so dead, there is no way in hell she's ever going to come back. And it's just like, how dark do you have to get, Disney?
Well, I mean, Snow White was the personification of, like, peace and goodness, and, you know, the witch had to pay for her hubris.
She did indeed. Now, I believe that is slightly different to the original German fairy tale. So, no, we've got very, very, very little amount of the film left.
Oh, Grumpy, no!
It's heartbreaking. But basically what ends up happening is that the evil queen so she doesn't die. Obviously Snow White's going to be fine and everyone's going to be happy and live happily ever after. But the Snow White and the Prince have a wedding and Snow White's stepmother gets invited. The Queen still believes that Snow White's dead, asks the magic mirror, who's the fairest in the land. It says, "Thou, lady, art loveliest here, I ween, but lovelier far is the new-made Queen," which enrages the Queen. So she obviously doesn't know. She arrives at the wedding, sees that the bride is Snow White, whom she thought dead. She's frozen with rage and fear, but when about to start pandemonium, the prince recognises her, and, recognises her as a threat to his kingdom, and orders for her to wear a pair of red-hot iron slippers, and to dance in them until she drops dead for the attempted murder of Snow White, so that the wedding can peacefully continue. So there's a lovely bit of stepmother murder in there with red hot iron slippers. That is how the actual fairy tale ends, which, like, good God, how dark is that?
It's funny, this is one of, like, the saddest endings to a Disney film that actively, like, rolls around and becomes one of the happiest, I think. Although, there is a theory that I've heard cropping up recently that Snow White actually stayed dead, and the whole prince coming to revive her and whatnot and lead her to, like, a castle in the sky is her going to heaven and whatnot.
Yeah, I've seen that one as well, and it sort of made even more sort of like, oh, because the first time that the prince appears is when she's looking down the wishing well and could potentially be suicidal, so it's like the prince is seen as Death or the Grim Reaper appearing when she is at most risk. And obviously the first time she runs away in fear, and then the second time she accepts him peacefully, and they go off into the sunset, and it goes up to like a castle in the sky, and it's just like, you're talking out your ass here, but there is actually kind of enough evidence in there to suggest that, well, it's completely ludicrous and not in keeping with the fairy tale. You can totally see how they have come to that conclusion, and it's one of the things where you're just like, okay, I can roll with that.
It's a beautiful interpretation, but I think just for Disney's sake, we'll stick with the actual happy ending and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it'd all be a little bit too depressing for everybody if True Love's Kiss, didn't save the day and we all lived happily ever after, because that would just be really depressing.
First wake in a Disney movie, really? Well, first anything in a Disney movie, really.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, what a lovely nap. Sorry, apples just give me terrible gas and I need to sleep it off.
What was with shoving me in that filthy old casket? Some air holes would be nice. Fewer worms, ideally. Sorry, I just had to get in my Bayonetta reference there.
What a beautiful ending.
Oh, I know, and just everyone's happy, and someday her prince did come for her.
Yes, he did. So we're heavily, approaching the ending here, rapidly even. So, Snow White, mate, summarise your thoughts, please, as only a novelist could.
Yes, decent, charming film, which has a really, really important place in cinematic history, and it can just be appreciated purely on that basis.
Very much so, yeah. As for me, a really charming film, like Richie said. Wonderful backgrounds, gorgeous character models, etc. A little bit plodding in places, but I would definitely watch this if you put it on. I wouldn't ask to change to a different film or something. And Richie's right, it has its place in the pantheon of Disney greats, and not for just the reason of being first. It's a genuinely decent film. So yeah, we shall leave you there, guys. This was the HFC Disneython commentary for Snow White, and we'll see you next time when the third Disneython continues. Bye for now.